Hello friends and welcome. I am Samantha of Krebs Bookkeeper Crafts, and if you're new here, I show you how I make things. Subscribe for more. Today I am showing you how to assemble the third clue in the Cotton Cuts Fall Puzzle Mystery Quilt series, Olympia. This is the third video in the Olympia series, so if you missed the first, check out the playlist in the description down below. If you are not familiar with Cotton Cuts Puzzle Mystery Quilts, it is a 10-month-long monthly subscription box of pre-cut fabrics for making a mystery quilt. Each month's box contains all the fabric you need, cut to the shapes you need to make that month's clue. I am making the small Shaun colorway, which is made up of all of these beautiful Northcott shimmer fabrics. If you're making a different colorway, that's okay. Just make sure to match your fabrics using your key. So let's go ahead and open up the bundle for the third month. To start with, it looks like we have a few different sizes of triangles. The small ones are in fabric F, and these large ones are in fabric A. And it looks like we have some squares of a few different fabrics. This one is fabric A. And these are really close. It looks like they're fabrics D and E. These two are super similar. Comment down below on whether I will have to seam rip something this time. So now we've got our fabrics out. Our directions tell us we need to start by making 4 patches with these 2 sets of squares. So these are D and E fabric squares. We're going to start making that 4 patch by sewing all of these squares together into DE fabric squares. Now, if this machine doesn't look like the machine in all of my other videos, and that is because my primary machine is at the service center right now. It decided to cannibalize itself, and so I am using my old Kenmore 10 from circa 1975. Yes, it is indeed older than me by about 15-20 years. I'm a youngin'. So I am using my backup machine, and it doesn't always have the perfectest 1/4 inch seam, and so that's why I am using this piece of tape here. I tested before I started sewing to make sure that the seam using this tape is going to match the seam that I was already using on my other blocks. As long as you're using a consistent seam, all of your blocks will go together in the end. Now that those are sewn together, it is time to press. Our directions are telling us to press to the D fabric. In my case, that is this light fabric up here. Follow your key and press it to the right fabric. Everything is pressed nice and flat, so it's time to join these DE fabric pairs into 4 patches. To do that, we are going to take one of these units, rotate it 180 degrees, and we're going to put it down here. Now the cool thing about pressing all of our seams to the D fabric is that our seams in the middle here are going the opposite directions. So we can see I have one seam going this direction and I have one seam going this direction. This means we can nest the seams together like this. If you butt those little lips of seams up against each other, they're going to go together perfectly, and this is how you get perfect points. Now our directions are telling us to press this seam down. Now that our 4 patches are made, we are going to move on to working with these triangles. These are going to be turned into 4 flying geese by sewing half of these small fabric F triangles on this corner and the other half over on this corner. Let's start with this side. We are going to press our seams to the fabric F triangles up here in the corner. And now we are going to sew the remaining fabric F triangles to this other side here. We are going to press to the F triangle again. And our flying geese are done. We're going to set 2 of these aside for the moment. Flip these 2 upside down and grab our last little squares of fabric A. We're going to go ahead and sew these fabric A squares to the left side of our upside down geese. We're going to go ahead and press to the A fabric squares. So let's go ahead and set these units up here for the moment. We will come back to those in a second. We're going to grab the 2 geese that we set aside earlier and our 4 patches, and we are going to make sure that we have them in the right orientation with our D fabric in the upper left-hand corner. So now we're going to take our 2 remaining flying geese and sew them on the left side of our 4 patch. Our seams aren't going to nest here, unfortunately, because this is an angled seam here, and this is a horizontal seam pressed to one side. So unfortunately, they're not going to nest, but what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to line this point up with this seam intersection right here. So to make sure those are lined up, I'm just pulling this back and I'm just peeking in here and looking at where my point is and lining that up with my seam intersection here. Now when I sew, I'm going to aim for this crisscross right here in the back. I'm going to want to sew on just, if it would focus, I'm going to sew just this side of that crisscross in the back so that when I open this up and press it, I'm going to have a nice point that is pointing directly at that seam. So here I have this sewn and you can see my seam is just outside of this little crisscross right here. And what that means is when I go ahead and open this up, I have almost perfect points there, depending upon how stretchy I get when I press it. It's going to lay about like that when I press it, and I have a nice little point that's pointing right at that seam. So let's go ahead and go press these. So for these ones, we are going to go ahead and press them to the 4 patch. Final step time. We are going to join our 4 patch goose unit with our goose square unit like so. Just like when we were sewing our 4 patches together, we're going to nest these 2 seams right here. That'll help us get perfect points. We're also aiming for the same point to seam connection that we did over here. One of the things that might help get these lined up very nicely is to go ahead and pin those. I'm brave, so I'm probably not going to pin. Am I going to regret that later? Probably. Okay, just kidding. I'm going to go ahead and pin one of these so that I can show you guys what it looks like to pin. So I'm going to start by lining up my nested seams here. So if you nestle them in together, like so that they're not going to slide around or anything. And then I'm just going to take a pin and I'm going to put it in. I'm going to put it in right next to the seam. That's just the way I like to pin things when I have seams nested. I don't want to put it through the seam because the pin could push the 2 parts apart. And then we're going to come over here. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to poke it through just south of that crisscross. We're going to poke that through. So we're coming out just through the nose of the goose. Now we're going to come over here and we're going to poke this through our seam allowance right about a 1/4 inch from the top of the fabric. And that is how we are going to line those up with pins. And there we go. Let's go ahead and sew that together. Don't sew over pins. It's a really good way to break your needle. Instead, what I like to do is I like to stop right when my pin comes to the presser foot, slide it out most of the way so it's out. You can see my pin is out of the one side over here. It's still holding this side together. So I slide it out most of the way, and then I slowly inch forward, and I pull it out just before my needle hits it. Especially when I'm looking for precise piecing like that. And we are going to go ahead and press this one towards the 4 patch. There is just one section this month, so let's just go ahead and label this with the number 3. And that's it. Those are the instructions for month 3 of the Fall 2021 Puzzle Mystery Quilt Olympia from Cotton Cuts. If you want any more information about the Cotton Cuts Puzzle Mystery Quilt, check out the link in the description down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to do the YouTubey things, thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you next month for clue number 4. Catch you later.